Hello, here we are for another episode. Excited to introduce today's guest, whom I reached out to on the socials, I think, or he reached out after listening to Danielle's episode, I think. So, another fellow adoptee in our community. He has a Facebook page and a YouTube channel for adoptees or people in the adoption circle called Fireside Adoptees. So, you can check him out there. And I want to introduce Greg Gentry. Hey, Greg.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi,
Greg.
Sarah and Louise. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
We're excited to have you.
Thanks for mentioning Fireside. And I'm a part of the Fireside leadership team and really excited to be associated with them and also Adoptees Connect.
Adoptees Connect. Yes, I failed to mention that.
And so we just went, dig right in. Why are you here? Tell us your story from the beginning, the whole thing.
Oh, sure.
And we're
Thank
kind of
you.
fans. So we're saying, oh, good, Greg's here. We're fans.
I appreciate that. And I'm definitely fans of you both. And
you're in New Hampshire today. Yes.
I am.
Okay.
Correct.
Coming to us from New Hampshire.
Yeah. I'm from San Diego, which is where I was born in 1969. And I was raised there, lived 37 years in Southern California, living in areas around San Diego and also a couple of years in Pasadena.
So you were born in San Diego?
I was.
Okay.
I was born in San Diego and raised in Escondido, California, about, you're probably both familiar with that, maybe about 25 miles north of where I was born. And I ended up, without knowing it, and that's part of my reunion story, my father's family was right there in Escondido and in Valley Center, California, within a few miles of me, and I never knew it. And it's just part of these complexities that befall us as adoptees. But I was
Were you adopted at birth? Okay, sorry.
I was as an infant. I spent 6 weeks in foster care. I was a baby scoop era adoptee, and that was, of course, common to be placed in foster care before going to a permanent home. And obviously, I'm a domestic adoptee, same race adoptee, and was raised with two older sisters who are biological to my parents. They're both, one is 7 years older, one is 4 years older than me, 3 years older than me. And we had a nice family for sure. I always felt loved and affirmed and wanted. And
what were the, I'm sorry to interrupt, what were the circumstances why they adopted you after having two girls?
It appears that they had suffered from miscarriages. They were, the way it's described to me is they were hoping to have a boy. And they obviously loved their daughters, but they had even had my name, Gregory, chosen for one or two of their daughters if they had turned out to be a boy. So they were hoping for a boy and did not have a boy and adopted one. So that was how I came to be in their family back in 1969, and raised a pretty standard, I guess, domestic U.S. life, and didn't talk about adoption. Didn't even know I was adopted until I was 10.
Wow. Okay.
So, but I always felt different, and I experienced my difference as different intellectual abilities, different physical talents. I wasn't super skilled at certain things, but I had a hard time fitting in with some of the things they were good at. So it became
How old were you? 10?
I was 10. And when I finally had the conversation with them, my mom said, we had told you at an earlier age, but I don't know when that was. If they had told me, and I have no reason to believe they didn't, I just don't remember when it was. So it must not have registered or been something I was able to process at that age when I was initially told. So by the time I was 10, I was watching a TV show, and it brought up the subject of adoption, and I asked, was told, yes, you are adopted. And
you asked if you were adopted?
I did.
So you just sensed already.
Yeah.
Wow. At 10, that's pretty profound. Yeah.
I apparently knew that something didn't feel right, because I remember the conversation very clearly, and how nervous it just made me agitated to ask this question. And so it was literally calling out to my mom in the other room, "I'm not adopted, am I?" And she came in to talk to me and said, "Yes, you are." And we did tell you at one point, and it was a very tender and heartfelt conversation, but it left me, as you can imagine, very, very shaken up, and really explained some of the things I had been experiencing and hadn't had words to articulate, which was this experience of being different from my family. And it did lead to a difference in how I perceived fitting into my family. And it's still that way to this day. It's just an experience of it's not that they never accepted me, because they did. They tried so hard. It's the fact, of course, that adoptees are not guaranteed to bond with the people they grow up with. And that unfortunately was the case, not because I don't love them deeply.
You didn't bond? Did you feel?
I would say that I've always felt this certain stiffness about my interaction with them, not coming from them. They were always very, very welcoming and loving and affectionate. It's this rigidity I feel physically about it, and also emotionally, that I've maintained this sort of distance that I can't help. For a long time, I felt really guilty about that, but I've come to forgive myself for that and realize it's okay. I don't have to force myself to fit into a certain mold. It's not a failing on my part. It's just the fact of the realization, that an awareness that I'm an individual who came from somewhere else.
That's so well put.
Yeah.
Really articulates some similar feelings I have.
You can experience that too. Yeah.
I was thinking about how many adoptees listening will just be like, because the guilt you just said of forcing yourself, like, oh, why aren't I feeling that way? It's so, hidden. Even I have that, and I didn't know I had that till you said it. It's like that. Oh,
yeah, it goes under that obligation, I think, that a lot of adoptees carry,
and
right?
then sometimes trying to overcompensate for the lack. So therefore, yeah.
Wow.
So then after you discovered that, did you find yourself pulling back even more in a way?
I did, but it was involuntary, of course. I mean, I was 10, but even as I navigated it growing up, we never talked about it again, first of all.
Ever?
No, until I was 20 something. That was like really the next time it ever came up about adoption.
And your dad wasn't part of that conversation?
He was away. He was working at the time, and he came home later that day and came in and had a very similar conversation with me, the way that my mom had. Again, very, very soft and sensitive and loving. And we just it never came up again. And I know that's typical for a lot of people in that age, in the baby scoop age, that their parents were encouraged not to really bring it up. So they didn't. And any of the times I did bring it up growing up later on, like when I approached adulthood, I could see and feel and sense the discomfort in my mom in particular. This isn't a comfortable subject. Why do we have to talk about this? And she would get emotional and say, "We've told you all we know," and it would shut it down. So we never talked more than 2 or 3 minutes about it for the next 10 or so years after finding out. But
I mean, how were you with your sisters?
My sisters have always been close to me in the sense that they say the same things. We always thought, we think of you as our brother, that it didn't matter to us. No one in my family, though, has ever asked me whether it matters to me or what I feel about it. It's just, they're so eager to tell me it doesn't matter to us. We don't think of you differently. And it didn't allow me the space to experience the fact that I really was unique and had my own characteristics and traits and things, and not for their lack of love trying, because they experienced of me as their brother. The reciprocation wasn't, I think I wasn't able to do it as much as I'm sure they would have wanted me to be able to do it. It was just really hard for me. I felt that emotional distance again that I talked about. And again, I think adoptees will definitely understand. It's not because I love them less. It's just they almost feel like very close connections or something, or friends in a way, more than what I thought family would feel like. I couldn't tell what family was supposed to feel like. And so I ended up in this situation where we were close, but we also, for me, it wasn't the experience of what I thought a family was really meant to be like.
It's the sibling thing is an interesting part of it. I've been having these conversations with my adult brother who's not adopted more recently, and he's like, oh, I never thought to ask you, and how he's listening. And even now I give him credit because he listens, but I can see the uncomfortable part for him. But he does try. He's like, oh, I'm supposed to ask her. But it was always like, no, it's always put on you. And then you're just kind of quiet, right?
That put on you part. Yeah. And that's the part I was finally able to release myself of, thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I be as connected as they want to be with me? And I just carried this guilt over that. And finally it's okay, Greg. It's not your fault. You're not choosing to be distant from them. It's just your experience of what your life is like, and the fact that you came from someplace else, and it doesn't for you feel like the most natural fit.
So you got through your teens and got to your 20s. Like what was the course of your life? So you realize that at 10, it kind of alters the course of your life, I guess, in an emotional way.
Right. So I was 100% compliant adoptee. And I didn't stick out at all.
Hence the guilt. Like, let me just get small, right?
Yeah, I've sometimes called myself a zero footprint adoptee, where I still navigate my life that way. Like if I'm at the store or someplace, I have to stay out of the way of people with their carts, and they want to look on the shelf, and I shouldn't be in the way of. It's like I don't want to be present in the world to any degree that would inconvenience somebody.
It's weird that I've often felt like that. I apologize that somewhere inside of me, I'm apologizing for my existence.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
I think
zero footprint adoptee. That's I mean, that's.
I was the flip side of that coin, but the feelings are the same.
Yeah, that's interesting because I always hear that as well. All the adoptees who
zero footprint, but acting out.
What now?
But acting out on the flip side,
Yeah, and I didn't act out at all. So like I said, I was docile and compliant, and like I never had a fight at school. I never fought with my sisters. I never talked back to my parents. I never had any rebellion of any kind, and grew up feeling all these really deep inadequacies, seeing my sisters fight, but not being one who fought with either one of them, seeing my oldest sister defy my parents and get into all kinds of trouble, but never was I thinking that way. And I still have this aversion to any kind of conflict or confrontation that just runs really, really deep in me. So, but I've been able to use it to my benefit in a lot of circumstances. It works well with my professional life, for example, to be a very calm person and not to be confrontational or belligerent or reactive in those ways. But I did find that, for instance, when I got married, that I had periods of being reactive and didn't know where they came from. I was finally in a relationship where I think I was realizing, or without consciously knowing it, some of this trauma was manifesting that I didn't know was there. And it would come out of me as fighting at the time, as verbal altercations. And I didn't know where it came from. And I'm sure my wife at the time thought, why you didn't used to be like this. And listening to other adoptee podcasts, for example, I heard people say, well, things didn't come out of me until later on. And I heard this just a couple of weeks ago. I thought that's really an explanation, I think, for I couldn't figure out either. Why was this suddenly happening? And it came up in early adulthood, and then I was married, in my mid-20s, and suddenly the issue of finding my biological family was really heavily on my mind. I became a father in 1998. So my son was the first person I saw who was related to me. I know that that's an experience I'm sure that sounds relatable as well. And within a couple of years of that, by my early 30s, I was compelled. I really wanted to know. I had spent early adulthood telling my family, I'm not interested. I don't care. That doesn't appeal to me. I'm here. I'm happy. I'm with you. And I think now that I was just answering the way that reassured them, because I knew inside I wanted to know. I just hadn't, I didn't
It's
know
like
how to do it. And I didn't think I should be able to.
Saying, yeah.
the birth of a child activates the sleeper cell or something,
The sleeper cell.
Yeah, very much
It's
so.
true. I do
Mhm.
want to say that I think my ex-husband could give you a book on like the coming out of the, I got married and the poor guy suffered a lot of things that came out in my first relationship like that.
Yeah, I hear more and more of it. Even when
Yeah.
I came out of the adoption fog in 2021, and my marriage kind of started to fall apart.
I'm sure.
I still felt very alone in that. I didn't know that there were other adoptees who were experiencing relationship conflicts and had these situations that they were working through too and trying to figure out. And the tendency for me was to internalize it and say, what's wrong with me? I'm a bad person. Why do I do this? And I hadn't heard about trauma. Trauma to me was people riding in an ambulance.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know. And finally I was exposed to what really appeared to be going on. And it was earth shattering to know that I had inflicted trauma on my own family and didn't even know where it had come from.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
Yeah, it's painful.
It is painful. It's hard to look back, and I didn't know until Sarah and I started doing this. I didn't know.
I feel like that's been one of the biggest benefits and blessings for me in the adoptee community, is not just the language I find, but also conceptually, I'm become aware of things that that are these explanatory keys,
Mhm.
parts of my existence, and I wouldn't find them any other way. I know some people say the community is too negative. I don't want to be a part of it. I would be so isolated. I wouldn't have these sounding boards and places that allow me to understand myself better. So I'm willing to take the risk of being in the community, even though there is definitely some negativity in here.
I feel like the
worth facing.
negativity is just
Hurt.
untapped pain, pain
Yeah.
that wasn't recognized, because of the narrative of gratitude and
I think so.
chosen and lucky. And so then when you do come out of the fog, it's like, I know for me, I've had some anger
Yeah.
come out. So, I don't express it in the ways that other people do, but it's understandable.
Yeah.
When we were first doing this, I'd see the anger side of it that we see in the community, and it scared me a little, kind of like, oh, and now I look at it as pain and hurt.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's like any traumatized people that are not really allowed to speak up, and all these issues that have come up in the world, and people are speaking up.
Exactly. And you always hear about hurt people hurting people.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly there's a lot of it in our community, as we talk about the primal wound, for example, root wounds and origin wounds and adoption trauma, and whatever other traumas people have in their lives after being adopted. And all of it can lead to people having these maladaptive behaviors and situations that doesn't, of course, make them bad people, but I think we tend to feel like we are. At least I did.
Oh yeah. I mean, still, that's a hard tape to erase.
Yeah. And it's so ingrained in the nervous system from basically in utero and the point of relinquishment that it doesn't just go away. you can, I think, do things to help cope with it and create a space where you're able to examine before the reactive part hits. You can learn to create space for that. But I for one, have never really experienced healing in the sense that I think most people talk about healing, because I know you both have heard that if you talk about pre-verbal trauma and the fact that there was no self before this, then when you talk about healing, you're not really healing back to something that existed before, because there wasn't anything there. All you can really do is lay a new foundation and build something on that, and know that the pain will still be there, but it's not like a bone healing because the bone wasn't formed before. So it's not that it's going to heal and get stronger than it was, because it didn't exist in a sense.
Yeah. So, okay. So in your 30s, you have your son, you decide you want to find your family. You want to know.
Yeah. My son and my daughter. So my son was born in 98 and my daughter in 2003. And by then I was talking with a good friend, still one of my best friends, and he's still out in San Diego, but he said, I really feel like as I talk with you that you need to find her. You need to look into this, because I can tell it's really consuming you and you're feeling all kinds of ways. And so around 2005, I started to get serious. Like, I really think I want to do this.
Now, had you been given a story? What was like the narrative that they gave you about her?
Nothing. Zero.
Nothing.
Just we've told you all we know. We don't know anything. That was it.
Nothing like how old she was, your
Not a
birth
word.
weight, nothing.
No.
Wow, I grasped on to the little stories I had. That would be
Zero.
zero.
Yeah.
Came out of the sky.
And
the stork.
Yep. Dropped on the doorstep.
So I had literally nothing to go on. My oldest sister, thought she had heard a discussion of names for me before I was born, which confused me, because like I said, they had also talked about naming her or my middle sister Gregory. But she said, for some reason, I thought they were going to choose the name Peter or Paul for you. Well, that turned out not to be true. I don't know where she got that. But when I finally decided I wanted to look, I found a PI through a web page, because I didn't know about DNA. There wasn't anything like this, right? So this would have been 2006, and I paid basically a PI who specialized in finding biological families of adoptees, and they were able to locate my information really pretty quickly, within about a week and a half. By the late fall of 2006, I had opened the email, and there was my birth mother's name, there was my grandparents' names, my mother's address or phone number, my biological father's name and where he was born. Not really any other information about him, but there were details.
That's pretty thorough for like a week search.
Yeah. It was of course shocking, as I said, we think we found her, but we need a little more time. And so you're waiting and anticipating. And I came home from work and opened up that email, and suddenly there it is, splashed on the screen. This is who they are.
And your parents didn't have any of that information?
That's boy, what a great question. I still that's what I heard. And like I said, it was accompanied by tears, and we've told you all we know. We don't know anything. I will say this, when I made the connection to my birth mother, and she said, I want you to tell them that you found me. I went and told them. That was a very difficult conversation. And they had told me they didn't know anything. And this was my mom's response. If you really found her, if you really found the right person, what was the name you were given when you were born? So I was put to the test.
So they knew.
So they knew. So I said, I didn't have a first name. I was baby boy Ricard. And my mom said, okay, that's the right name. So there is some information somewhere that I've never seen still. I don't have any details from my parents. They still haven't told me what they know. I think I was only very dimly aware of the existence of like adoption agencies or files that people have. I've never seen any of that. I somehow had convinced myself that I literally came out of nowhere and that there was no agency or no intermediary. It was just here's your new son. And
Are both
but
your adopted parents still alive?
they are.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in their 80s.
So there's no like secret drawer you haven't looked through or anything.
There probably is. I've never tried physically to locate anything like that, but there must be. There has to be something somewhere because
so they withheld information from you is
yeah.
But
yeah.
you haven't confronted them, I'm guessing, because
no,
not your personality.
I felt on that night that I was telling them I found her that I just need to reassure them right now. That's what I need.
Right.
And didn't even think about the enormity of being asked that. Okay, prove you are who you are, basically.
Oh my gosh.
To your parents.
You have that information.
So,
yeah, that was, I don't know how common that is, or if you hear that often in interviews.
Not that we haven't heard. I haven't heard that.
That
Heard
was
a lot of I had the same thing with making it okay for everybody when I told them.
Yeah, I remember that very clearly. I remember all the tears. I thought my dad was having a heart attack.
Oh yeah.
Remember my parents
It's just
talking to each other about it.
It's hard not to get mad hearing that. Just here's this kid who came to you at 10. You had every opportunity to just be upfront and honest. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So that was, so I found her in November of 2006.
Was she young when she gave birth to you?
She was 14 when I was born.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
And my father would have been 16.
Just kids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my parents asked a little bit about her when this came out. We always assumed she was young, things like this. They've really never asked me anything else about her. And
can I ask?
Yeah,
so being 14,
sure.
your biological mom, did she have other children? What did this do to her?
She completed like a freshman year in high school and then dropped out and got married. I think probably in her early 20s, she was married, and she does have two other half siblings of mine who are in Texas. A brother who's 9 years younger than me, and a sister who's 14 years younger than me. And I'm in contact with both of them, and I've been in and out of reunion with her, and right now I'm out of reunion with her. There's been a lot of roller coasters there, and it broke down finally in 2021 before my family was moving from Boston to Florida. And so that connection is kind of dead right now. But I talked to both my siblings. I talked to her husband, who's in the same house with her. She knows I talk to him. He reaches out to me. He stays in touch with me, and it's a weird feeling to know he may be sitting on the couch next to her talking to me on a text message. And he said, I know she's upset that I talked to you. And we've probably had like 3 fallings out over the course of the years, of about the 14 years we were in reunion. And this last time I realized all the times this has happened, I've had to go chase her down again. And I finally was like, I'm not going to do it. And so I've been in this spot. Some people would say, well, that's just obstinate. You're holding out on what could be a good thing. And I think probably, though, adoptees understand why you feel like, come on, am I worth coming coming to find one time, she had told me when I initially contacted her that she just hadn't felt like she was worthy of, or that she had any right to find me. But she was very interested in it and certainly was delighted in the contact. But each time it broke down, I had to be the one to restore it. And basically through self-abasement of just like, I'm sorry for anything that's wrong that I've ever done or that my extended family has ever done to you. And all these apologies, please come back in my life. It was this real desperation on my part. And then finally in October 2021, when it happened for the last time, I was like, I'm not doing it. It was completely uncalled for what happened. And it happened in the context of her finding out I was looking for my father's side of the family, of my family. And her response to that was basically like, don't ever talk to me about this again. When you move to Florida, don't talk to me right away. I don't want to hear from you. You have a problem with communication. She just completely unloaded on me. So that broke, and it's still broken. It's coming up on her birthday. I texted her on her birthday last year and didn't have a response, but I did that kind of for me. So like, I want to do that. Didn't really expect anything and didn't get anything back. I may try it again this year, but those are of course the complications in reunions, things that break down.
Do your siblings have a difficult relationship with her?
They do. In fact, one of them has said, I don't understand what's going on with her. Why she seems to be this certain way. And I said to myself, I think I know where that comes from. I didn't tell my brother that, but I was thinking she's locked into a time when she was 14 years old, basically, and dealing with all the trauma of that. And it comes out in her, with her kids, basically, I would say.
Yeah. It's a lot of deep work to do to get out of that trauma.
Yeah. Definitely so.
So on your biological father's side, did you find him?
Well, so that actually was part of the breakdown between us two. My mother, not even just what I referred to, but when I got the information from the PI, I just had his name and the place he was born, which was at Norman, Oklahoma, and the year of 1953. My oldest adoptive sister did some internet work and found out he was deceased. He died in 1988, so when I would have been 19. And it's weird because I couldn't feel it at the time. I was so focused on her, on my mother, and the fact that I had siblings and the few things that she told me about him made me feel like maybe I don't want to find out about his family, because I was experiencing what I thought would be rejection, because I knew that eventually they were not together. They were young. They were teenagers, right? Young teenagers. And their parents had decided they wouldn't get married. And so he started avoiding her. And the decision was made, and I was given up, and they really never spoke after that. But she had told me a couple details about him. And when I found out that he was dead, I was holding on to this information for a couple of weeks. Like, what do I do? How do I tell her this? She doesn't know. And finally, I did tell her probably in early 2007, and she was understandably really distressed by that. Somewhere along the way, she blocked that out. And when in 2021, I decided I really wanted to find his family, I mentioned something in a message to her, and her response was like, what do you mean he's dead?
Oh.
And she said, how could you tell me something so insensitively? I said, my wife and I remember me telling you this back in 2007. I wasn't trying to be insensitive to you. You've known this for a long time. And she said, no, I'm not stupid. I'm not old. I'm not this. you never told me this. You said you thought he might be dead. I was like, so she had blocked it out.
Selectively block
Yeah.
that out. Mm.
And it manifested in this anger to me, like, how could you be this way to me? What are you looking for? That was the other thing. What are you searching for? There was these really pointed messages in the text to me. And I said, I'm trying to connect with them. I could have just said, oh, I just want to find out about health history or something very innocuous. But I was like, I want to find this side of the family. That's what I'm looking for. An adoptee friend, when I came out of the fog in 2021, had actually said, I think I've been able to research who your family is with the few details that you told me. That on your dad's side, she showed me pictures, because I didn't have access to any ancestry or any accounts or anything like this. So she showed me only the second picture I'd ever seen of my father. I had one from my birth mother that I actually can't locate right now. She showed me my grandparents, and she said, I want you to take a minute here, because you have 5 siblings, 2 on his side.
Wow.
I thought, wow, I was assumed because he died at such a young age, and the little bit of internet work I did, I couldn't see anything. But it turned out there were 5 other siblings. And by November of 2021, I thought, I'm going to do this. She said, I think these are the people to contact if you want to do this. She wrote an email to them, an introductory kind of thing, but one of these elusive kind where you write, like, you're not trying to give away the whole thing. And then I was out of touch with her for a while. And in November of that year, I thought, I'm going to reach out again and reach out for myself. I found an email address, and in November, I was connected with their side of the family for the first time. And that was a very overwhelming experience.
November of 21.
21. Yeah.
Okay. So it hasn't been that long at all.
No. I found out that the 5 brothers, 3 were raised by one mother and 2 from another mother, and then me, that none of them knew I existed.
How old was your father when he passed away?
33.
Oh, you had a lot
Young.
of kids. Yeah.
Do you know how
Yeah.
he died?
He died in a car accident.
Ah,
Yeah. And he died very close to where I grew up, probably 5 miles from my childhood home. So my brothers grew up literally over the hill from where I was. I didn't know any of that. They didn't know I existed. 4 of the 5 of my brothers were born in the same hospital my kids were born in. Didn't know any of that.
how much younger are they?
So the brother's closest in age to me is 3 years younger than me. So he's just turned 50.
So 19, he started having his
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. And then the 5 go all the way through the 80s. There were a couple born in the 80s that are pretty young. They're mid 30s now, mid to late 30s. And I'm in touch with 4 of the 5 of them. The 5th one hasn't acknowledged me yet. I don't think he ever will.
Is he the one that's closest in age to you?
No, the one who's closest in age to me is actually one I'm about to go meet next week in person for the first time.
Ah,
So
You have to keep us updated on that.
I'm excited. Thank you.
He's been welcoming and excited.
Yeah. Everyone was, which is great. I mean, it's easy to feel like, well, they didn't know. And even the mother of 3 of them I'm in contact with, she's a Facebook friend of mine. She said, I'm sorry I didn't tell them about you. I didn't really know how to handle that. And I said, it's okay. I know it was difficult. I found out that my father met her at the rival high school in my hometown. They met that way, or met right there, 5 miles from my house. And
So she knew he had a baby.
She knew.
Oh,
wow.
She was
and
able
they're
to
young. They're young. No one knows how to process all this.
Yeah, right. So she hadn't told them, but when they found out, they were receptive to me. We don't have what I would call deep relationships, but we were obviously, they'll call me brother, and I call
Not
him
yet.
brother. Yeah, maybe we can develop that in time. They've said that it's a little challenging for them just because of how they grew up to experience deep family connections, but I think that can developed somewhat over time.
So then he had two more with someone else.
Right.
And one of those two is in touch with you.
Yes. And
He's pretty
both of those
fertile, I
two-
have to say. He's a fertile guy. Not to make light, but that's a lot of kids. 6
Yeah.
kids before 33.
Yeah. Two others were placed for adoption as well after he died.
Oh.
So two of my brothers, the youngest two, are also adoptees now.
Oh. Huh. That's
Uh,
interesting.
Yeah. So they were adopted to Oklahoma, which is right from where he's from. I still don't know exactly how they ended up back in Oklahoma, but they appear to have been, they were adopted by the same parents. So they got to stay together. One of them is the one who's not in touch with me. And the other-
How old were they when they were adopted?
So he died in 88. I think they were like maybe 2 and 4 probably when they became wards of the state after they were
Mhm.
abandoned. And
Oh, their mother abandoned them.
yeah,
God, poor
so
kids.
I don't have any information on her, but and of course I don't mean to overshare their story, but they
Yeah.
ended up eventually being adopted to a couple in Oklahoma who, from what one of my brothers says, that they're just great parents, which is I'm glad to hear. It was a rough life for them, for all 5 of the boys, and they sometimes they will say, "You're the lucky one, Greg." I'm like, I don't think so, because I didn't have any of you, so I don't view just the fact that I had more things than you did growing up to be a substitute for the relationships and the family that I lost. In order
That's
to be-
always the measure, I think, in the adoption narrative of, because you weren't raised in a poor family, things must have been much better. It
Right.
just seems to be that in the collective consciousness
Uh,
when people talk and think
All
about
the
adoption.
time.
Yeah, I hear it so much.
I know.
It's very understandable why your brother, the one brother, won't be in touch. He probably has his own lots of journey to go through.
Yeah. I'm compassionate for him. I'm a little disappointed, to be honest,
Mhm, mhm.
because it hurts, because I know what this experience is like too, and I just wanted to connect with him, and he hasn't acknowledged me, so that does hurt, and it makes me want to be angry at him, but I also do have some empathy for the fact that he's gone through a difficult journey as well.
And it's all pretty new, right?
Yeah, he wouldn't have known I existed until he suddenly received an email from me. But
Yeah.
his other brother, this is the weird part about language and adoption. His other brother is my brother.
Right. Yeah.
His full brother, my half brother, I thought would have told him a little bit about me, but they don't seem to have had that conversation. So I'm in touch with my youngest brother, but not this other one.
I mean, that could change, as you know.
Mhm.
It's also fluid, all
Right.
this stuff.
So next week you're going.
Yeah,
This is
You have
something-
to you
yeah.
have to message me and let me know how that goes.
I will. I certainly will. I'm totally thrilled.
You're going
Are
out
you-
to California?
He's in the Northwest. He's in Seattle.
Oh,
Isn't-
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
Yep.
and is this the first of those 5 that you're meeting?
I've met one other in person. This is another of the weird synchronicities in adoption, as I stayed with my adoptive parents for 5 months in 2022 when I was going through this situation with my separation in my marriage, and I happened to be at their house and ended up staying for an extended time, and found out 2 of my brothers were in Montana, about 3 and 4 hours away from where I was staying. And then I found out that the 3 of them had actually had lived and gone to high school about 4 miles from where my parents built their house in Montana. Even though my parents had retired there from California. So I ended up in proximity to them.
How
not
bizarre.
Totally by choice. I even
Of all
messaged one.
states too. That's so
Yeah,
strange.
isn't it weird?
Mhm.
I messaged one of my brothers, the one I'm meeting next week. I said, I'm at a Christmas recital for my great niece, and I'm sitting in the gym of your high school right now. So it was weird.
I mean, that's crazy. It's the least populated state.
And not a place people retire often.
No,
Well,
no.
unless you have the means to do so. I'd retire there in a minute.
That's cold. I mean, usually people go, you
True.
know, it's a weird San Diego and Montana connection there.
Yeah, very strange that they ended up there too. They had grown up part of their lives there, even though
You
they
were
were
meant to, it's all that kind of, there's no accidents, you know.
very interesting, right? How it's all interwoven like that. And yeah, I met one of them within about 3 months of starting the reunion with my dad's side. And he's in Big Sky, Montana, and I went to stay with him and his wife for a couple of days. They very graciously received me and welcomed me. I even did an interview for Fireside from their spare bedroom. As soon as I got there, I said, I have to do something right away. I'm sorry, I have this appointment I have to keep. And so that actually was recorded in their house, one of my interviews.
Did you feel a connection with like that genetic connection?
Yeah, it's of course you look in such great detail for things, and you notice these funny little quirky things. The thing I noticed, I didn't see a lot of physical similarity except for I think the bone structure. I used to be a lot thinner. They're very skinny, the three brothers on that from that mother. But I remember walking into his house and seeing the way he put on his shoes, and I said, "You don't untie your shoes, do you, before you put them on?" He said, "No." I said, "No, I don't do that either." So little things like that you would think nobody notices things like that, but adoptees notice all kinds of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
All those things. So yeah, I definitely felt that connection. It was wonderful to feel, and I'm looking forward to hopefully feeling the same thing when I meet my other brother in about a week.
Well, definitely keep us posted. And
Yes.
Thank you. I will. I appreciate the interest.
thanks so much for this. Was such a deep,
It
layered
was.
conversation. Really appreciate how candid you are and vulnerable. And
I have a lot of
you.
feelings swirling in my head from this.
Oh
Yeah.
man,
You are very vulnerable and honest, and just, you know, it's going to help others to hear.
I appreciate that. The opportunity is something I was really excited for, and I'm honored to be speaking with you. Thanks so much.
thanks, Greg. We'll
Thanks,
talk to you
Greg.
soon for
We'll
sure.
and everybody find Greg.
Yeah, we'll put all
Fireside.
your Fireside.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank
Talk soon,
you.
Greg.
Bye.
Bye.